How do you like my new car? Isn't diesel dirty?
Oh, say it's beautiful, for Christ's sake.
I think it's beautiful, but aren't diesels dirty?
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, that used to be dirty. This is 2015.
No.
In 2015, regulators discovered something very different.
Listen to me, Terry. Diesel in Latin means dirty.
I'll prove it to you.
Millions of Volkswagen vehicles were programmed to cheat government emissions tests.
You're gonna ruin your scarf. Oh, look what she's doing.
See how clean it is?
It's not dirty, but you still have a dirty mind.
The scheme would become known as Dieselgate, and it would cost more than $30 billion. One of the largest automakers in the world admitted to having frauded environmental tests in millions of vehicles. In 2015, Volkswagen was accused of deliberately installing software to circumvent regulatory tests conducted by governmental environmental authorities. The vehicles were approved in official emission evaluations. Outside the laboratory, under real-world driving conditions, they emitted nitrogen oxides at levels up to 40 times higher than the limits permitted in the United States. It was not a technical failure. It was not a design error. The system detected when the vehicle was being tested. It activated a low emission mode. Once the evaluation ended, it returned to normal operation. For years, millions of cars operated under two standards, one for testing, another for the roads. More than 11 million vehicles were affected on a global scale. On September 18, 2015, the United States Environmental Protection Agency issued a formal notice accusing the company of violating environmental law. The scandal would result in more than $30 billion in fines, settlements, and legal costs. Executives were charged. Some were imprisoned. The fraud was not invisible within the organization. It was a system integrated into the engine's design. The question is not only how the software worked. It is why a company that built its reputation on engineering and trust chose to assume a risk capable of compromising its entire global credibility. The fraud was not discovered in a police operation. It did not begin with an internal whistleblower. It began in an academic project. In 2014, researchers from West Virginia University were conducting emissions tests under real-world driving conditions. The objective was simple: to measure the difference between laboratory tests and emissions on the road. The vehicles analyzed included diesel models from Volkswagen. The results did not match the official data. In the laboratory, emissions were within legal limits. On the road, levels of nitrogen, oxides were significantly higher, in some cases, far above regulatory standards. The team used portable emissions measurement equipment installed directly on the vehicles. The tests were repeated on different routes, under different conditions. The results remained inconsistent with official certification. The report was submitted to the United States Environmental Protection Agency and to the California Air Resources Board. What began as a technical doubt became a formal regulatory investigation. From that moment on, the question was no longer whether there was a difference. It was why it existed. As the investigation advanced, authorities needed to understand how the difference between laboratory and road conditions was possible. The answer lay in the software that controlled the diesel engine's fuel injection and emissions treatment system. The vehicles involved used an electronic system capable of monitoring multiple operating variables: wheel speed, steering wheel position, duration of operation, acceleration, pattern. During regulatory tests, the vehicles were placed on a dynamometer. The wheels rotated. The steering wheel remained still. The speed cycle followed a predictable pattern. The software was programmed to recognize this specific combination of conditions. When it detected the pattern, it activated a strict emissions control mode. In this mode, the exhaust gas recirculation system and other mechanisms operated at maximum capacity to reduce nitrogen oxides. The vehicle then complied with legal limits. Outside the testing pattern, the software deactivated this specific mode. The engine began to operate, prioritizing performance and fuel efficiency. The result was a significant increase in emissions under real-world conditions. The mechanism was not random. It was not an intermittent error. It was a programmed logic. According to authorities, the code was developed to differentiate between test conditions and normal driving conditions. From that point forward, the issue ceased to be a technical anomaly. It became a design decision. With the data from West Virginia University in hand, American authorities initiated formal inquiries to Volkswagen. The first response was not a confession, it was a technical explanation. The company attributed the discrepancies to possible failures in the emissions control system. Software updates were announced, adjustments were proposed, but tests continued to produce inconsistent results. The Environmental Protection Agency and the California Air Resources Board intensified the investigation. Meetings were held, documents were requested, new tests were conducted. In 2015, as the certification of new models was being reviewed, authorities began to demand more detailed explanations. Pressure increased. Without a satisfactory response, the approval of new vehicles was placed at risk. It was in this context that, according to official reports, Volkswagen admitted the existence of software capable of recognizing test conditions. On September 18, 2015, the Environmental Protection Agency issued a formal notice of violation against the company. The case became public. What had until then been a technical investigation transformed into a global corporate crisis. From that moment on, the question was no longer whether there was a difference between testing and reality. It was who knew, since when, and at what level the decision had been made. After the formal notice from the United States Environmental Protection Agency, the crisis escalated rapidly. Within days, the case ceased to be a regulatory investigation and became an international scandal. Volkswagen shares suffered a sharp decline in financial markets. Billions of euros in market value were lost within days. Investigations were opened in Germany, in the United States, and in other countries. German prosecutors initiated inquiries into possible fraud. In the United States, the Department of Justice opened a criminal investigation. On September 23, 2015, Martin Winterkorn, then CEO of Volkswagen, resigned from his position. In a public statement, he declared that he had no personal knowledge of the manipulation, but assumed responsibility for the crisis. From that moment on, the issue ceased to be purely technical. It became a governance crisis. Internal audits were initiated. Boards of directors faced pressure. Executives were suspended and later charged. The scandal reached the core of corporate leadership. What began with software installed in a diesel engine transformed into one of the largest reputational collapses in the history of the automotive industry. The company that promoted clean diesel became associated with environmental fraud on a global scale. And at that moment, the question was no longer whether the fraud had occurred. It was what the consequences would be. In January 2017, Volkswagen pleaded guilty in federal court in the United States. The company admitted to conspiracy to defraud the United States, violation of environmental law, and obstruction of justice. The criminal agreement was entered into with the United States Department of Justice. The total value of settlements, fines, compensation programs, and related costs would exceed $30 billion globally. In the United States, the company agreed to pay more than $4 billion in criminal and civil penalties. In addition, it committed to implementing an independent corporate compliance monitor. Executives were indicted. In 2018, a former Volkswagen executive was sentenced to prison in the United States. Other proceedings were initiated in Germany. In 2018, Volkswagen itself agreed to pay an administrative fine of €1 billion to German authorities. The brand Audi, part of the group, was also fined. The case became one of the largest corporate criminal prosecutions in recent history. It was no longer a technical investigation, it was criminal liability. The scandal reshaped the relationship between the automotive industry and environmental regulation, and it established a precedent. The manipulation of digital systems can result in criminal consequences on a global scale. After the criminal confession and the multi-billion-dollar settlements, one question remained. How did a fraud of this scale develop within one of the largest industrial organizations in the world? In the years leading up to 2015, Volkswagen had a declared goal to become the largest automaker on the planet. The American market was strategic, and diesel technology was presented as an efficient, low-emission alternative. The promise was clear: performance without sacrificing environmental standards. But United States emission standards for nitrogen oxides were more stringent than those in Europe. Engineers faced a complex technical challenge: meet environmental limits without compromising cost, fuel consumption, and power. Subsequent reports indicated that the software was implemented in a context of pressure for results. Internal investigations and court documents pointed to failures in supervision and in the escalation of risks within the corporate hierarchy. The organizational structure was described as highly centralized. Technical decisions were not always questioned at higher levels. The problem was not only the software code. It was the environment in which it was approved. Dieselgate did not emerge in a single day. It was the result of accumulated decisions, of defined priorities, of ambitious targets. When pressure for performance overrides control mechanisms, risk ceases to be technical, it becomes institutional. Dieselgate was not merely an environmental scandal, it was a milestone in the transition of the automotive industry into the digital era. For decades, trust in a vehicle was associated with mechanical components, engines, gears, physical systems. But in the 21st century, the behavior of an automobile came to be defined by lines of code, algorithms, embedded systems, invisible decisions. In Volkswagen's case, the deviation was not in the engine structure. It was in the logic that controlled it. The software did not merely optimize performance, it altered reality according to context. When digital systems begin to mediate the relationship between company and regulator, transparency ceases to be visible, it becomes programmed. Dieselgate revealed that technological complexity amplifies the reach of corporate decisions. A single line of code can affect millions of vehicles. A digital parameter can alter an entire market. The case established a clear precedent. In digital systems, responsibility does not end with engineering. It extends to governance, to oversight, to organizational culture. Dieselgate was not only an environmental fraud. It was a warning about the power and the risk of invisible technologies at global scale. In the era of software, trust is not merely performance. It is code integrity. It is institutional responsibility. It is decision. Subscribe to this channel to follow the next documented case.